you're kindly invited to register in our YouTube channel. So we have Ronald Sasine, major consultant at Major Windsor, who participates from the United States, Chicago, and presented circular economy and plastics in American vision. Alexander Turra, PhD and full professor at the University of São Paulo. He talked about plastic in the seas. Manoel Lisboa, expert in polymers, innovation, and new business, who talked about the development of new materials and their impact in the evolution of society. Albano Schmidt, CEO of Thermotecnica, who talked about plastic packaging helping export food in Brazil. Nuno Aguiar, technical director of APIP, the Portuguese Association of the Plastic Industry, discussing the circular economy of plastics in Portugal, a sustainable vision. And Marcos Iorio, consultant of Ecocircular Projetos Regenerativos, who talked about the protagonism of plastics in the circular economy. The mediator will be Alfredo Schmitt, president of the SustenPlást Institute. Alfredo, over to you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be talking to you. I know Nuno and Marcos Iorio in person. It's a great pleasure. First of all, I listened to all the presentations and they were excellent. Marcos, I really liked the term you used, dark washing. It was so good. It's something that we will need to use. This will be part of our repertoire of expressions. It's so true. And I was really charmed. I mean, these were so many different comments that we got on all the topics that were discussed. So the afternoon panel, as well as the morning panel, they were both excellent. The Israel room was also great. We had three professors, PhDs. That was exceptional, outstanding quality. When this material is made available, please take a look at that too. It's really worth it. These, all these topics add a lot of value to our discussions. I'll start this conversation with a question that was left behind. I think I'm the oldest. I need my glasses on. And this was a question to Nuno. And the question goes, Nuno, historically, the tax burden in Brazil limits our economic activity. In Portugal, like with all the European Union, there was a policy to reduce tax on the plastic recycling chain. Has there been such a policy? Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, thank you for your question. It's very important, a very important question. Well, tax is something that's cross-sectional in all economic activities, including recycling, but also transformation of raw materials in all segments, both plastic and other materials. In the case of plastics, right now, one of the greatest obstacles to this um, this sector is tax on the waste of the recycling industry. So, for example, the rate in landfills, it's an obstacle, or the acquisition of waste, but the tax on or and the money that companies pay to dispose in landfills is very high. And this fee, when you consider the review of national strategic plans, this rate has been increasing and we're expecting it to be even higher to landfill products. We understand the this need to reduce this disposal into landfills, and we want to do much more. In terms of recycling, it's hard to understand This is an end-of-line activity, recycling, and it shouldn't be uh, made less important than the other sectors in the area of waste. I have a comment before I take the next question. The Brazilian or the fourth Brazilian Congress, Plastics Congress, should be held last October. It takes place every 2 years, but with the pandemic, everything has changed, of course, and we are now having it online. And we chose this date for a reason. This is a very important date. We want it to be held on the environment, the week of the environment, on the day of the oceans. So the Brazilian plastic sector has a lot to show and a lot to add. And I'd like to stress that we really want to contribute for a better solution to this planet. Can you talk about tax burden? I have one example in the United States. It's also very interesting for you. Sure, of course. Well, in the United States, in our many states, they have what we call recycling zone. So if I invest in one recycling zone, an area that's economically active for recycling, what takes place here? Tax on the purchase of machinery, equipment, the acquisition of land, everything that is related to recycling in the recycling zone, within the recycling zone, it's tax exempt for a time. So this is an incentive to recycling in an area, particular areas, and investors can receive a push, if you will, some boost to their investment. Well, Ronald, that's so interesting. I don't know about uh, recycling. I have some friends who have this. I don't know if my friends in Brazil have this information. So if you could, some project, it doesn't matter what, but if you could present this situation, to present this scheme to Brazilian officials as a way to encourage recycling, this would be good. Yes, very good. Right. So on behalf of the recycling committee of the AB Plast, thank you. Thank you for giving us this information. A question to Manuel. Manuel, I know PNL or neurolinguistic programming, NLP, very superficially, but when you mentioned beliefs, you were talking about this from an NLP perspective, right? So why does such bad information about plastic? Most of the information about plastic is bad, and a lot of them is false. So why do people accept them? How what can we do to improve this? Well, Alfredo, currently we get lots and lots of repetitive data about plastics. So you get a huge load of information on plastics. And when this increases, it's much easier to criticize than to praise. So when you go there, you get more likes or more okays when you say what people want to listen, even if it's not correct. So when we talk about NLP, first there's your behavior, what you do. Now the second base is your skills, what you think you know. And then you go up to the beliefs, which are on a higher level. So to change the press, it's harder to, to change behavior. Now, if you start by changing behavior, if you start by learning more, you generate more skills, and then you start changing your beliefs too. And that's what's taking place with plastics today. We need to add more information, correct, accurate information. Not only companies, not only should companies do this, but also all stakeholders in the plastics value chain, everyone should convey information, accurate information, those that transform plastic, those that everyone who works in plastics, all the universities, and so on and so forth. So when all that information is made into knowledge, we change beliefs. I'd like to make a complimentary comment, Manuel. I'll tell you a brief anecdote. Am I speaking too fast? Should I speak more slowly? No, you're fine. I try to speak more slowly. Don't worry, don't worry. So recently, the coordinator of the institute was asked to do a course at a university, a, a, re- a course in a circular economy in Europe, in the United States, in Brazil, wherever she wanted. And we saw the list of professors giving the course, and then the course or the disciplines or subjects. Plastic has always been the ugly duckling. No one talks about other materials as badly as they talk about plastic. So, as you've just mentioned, it's hard to change a belief. Now, if we as a whole, if we let things continue, it will snowball. No one will be able to hold it anymore or control it anymore. So, when we think about circular economy courses, we should also say something. I'm not saying that we shouldn't uh, try to take advantage of it, of course, or to be biased at all, but we should provide accurate information for students doing courses in circular economy. I have a comment, if you will. At our in our time, we believed that if we drank milk and ate mangoes at the same time, we would die. This was a belief that existed in Brazil. So I'm not walking under a ladder because I'll have 7 years of bad luck or I won't break a mirror. So what do we need to do? We need to offset that belief. We have to do it, ensure that nothing will happen. I can have a uh, smoothie with milk and mangoes, and everyone will and invite everyone to drink it and see that no one died. And that will make absolutely clear that this belief makes no sense. So we are dispelling these myths. We're showing that plastic is sustainable, that we have a way out, that we can use it in many ways. And this is what we have to show. This is how we will dispel these myths or break these beliefs. But it has to be something that all society should do, and we have to be coherent. Can I add a comment here? The fact that what we need to face is we have a very clear problem, a problem of visibility. Everyone sees it. Everyone sees plastic at the end of its life cycle. But the benefit of plastics remains invisible to most people. So there's one thing that is visible at the end of its life cycle, and the benefit remains invisible. And people don't see much more. They can see much more than what they have in their hands. So we should emphasize these benefits realistically. and tangibly for those that are using and benefiting from the use of plastics. That's very true. You know, Ron, in Brazil, in Sao Paulo more recently, a law was passed prohibiting the use of disposable cups and plates, but it's not ratified yet. So it's not exactly into force. And everyone has been discussing this disposable materials, but in fact, 1.6 billion disposable masks that were thrown out inappropriately in Brazil. No one talks about these masks. So, what is the benefit of the mask? It's much greater than its discarding, and people don't see this. We should also show this kind of thing to people. Alexander Turra, tell me more. I've known you for a long time. I've always followed your work. So since from 2016 to 2021, has there been any evolution? Has there been any update in your uh, views on the management of uh, the oceans and all your work? Thank you, Alfredo. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, the topic, this theme has been evolving, especially with the pandemic, understanding the impacts of plastic in the sea, and also there's something that makes it extremely clear when plastic is out of place. Anything that is out of place shouldn't be out of place. Otherwise, we will have this situation, this demonizing of plastic, and its importance will be forgotten, will be overlooked, and things get out of proportion. So we have been making strides. We know about the problems associated with it. There are lots of myths that are being dispelled or debunked, and others are being made clear. Now, there's a huge bottleneck with additional information that we have to consider. So, if we don't want our garbage to be sent to the sea, if this does not exist, if this is not done, then our garbage can be compared to other types of garbage clearly, as was expressed by many people. And these things need communicating. For this to be valid, this cannot happen. Things cannot be out of place. I have to close our doors. And this is when the concepts come in handy, and when the Environmental Assembly of the United Nations has been addressing the problem of litter in the sea and plastic in the sea. So, one thing is changing the idea of combating plastic as a product, but rather combating the leaking of this product, of this material, plastic, into the sea, and using many strategies, including upstream or the design until the well, downstream, where it's the end of the life cycle, especially in the south of the globe, where we are, exactly in the south, geopolitically speaking. So this information, Alfredo, needs to be clearly clearly stated. We shouldn't first deny that there's a problem and plastic is out of place, but that this product has a value. And as a biologist, in my I'm not an expert in the life cycles, but for me, plastic the value it has is commensurate with its use and how useful it is, like with aluminum and other values. So plastic has a value that is commensurate with its non-monetary value. In other words, how useful it is, its value of use. So no one will shouldn't dispose of it, throw it away. And this is what we need to discuss freely so that we identify potential ways that can sort the problem, address the problem. I'm just trying to shift the paradigm so that we can expand the horizon of our reflections. And in closing, Alfredo, and I said this before, it's crucial that this sector be organized and talk to the organizations that are representing Brazil so that we go deeper into our local or national discussions, and then these diplomats will take Brazil's position there. Brazil has no position, it's still being discussed. I'm in touch with many sectors and departments of the ministries and Plaza Vida on behalf of Miguel. Miguel has been working hard there, and he can discuss these reflections with you in the United States as well to have more structured debate on these issues. So this discussion with the ministries is really important for this sector in Brazil to be better organized and anticipates problems that may lie ahead of us. This is an important recommendation, and there's been work being done. Thank you, and thank you for letting me uh, talk to you. Well, thank you so much for this update and what you've done. This is really important to us. And also, and this is a question I had to Albano. In other congresses, we've always had a topic, which was packaging Brazil for exporting. And Brazil exports coffee in 50-kilo bags and sugar likewise. Why doesn't Brazil export these products in smaller units, like maybe to China? Some Chinese ports, the unloading would be much easier if the products were in smaller portions. But this is still ongoing. This discussion is still ongoing. So when I got a presentation, Albano's presentation, and he explained how much effort he put into, correct me if I'm wrong, but uh, seeking quality seals or labels for our products to be at the right level for European countries. So do you think that this is important to plastic transformation industries in Brazil to raise their quality levels so that we can, well, you're working really, really hard to produce packaging to take fruit from Brazil to Europe. And before, uh, there's a video that is being aired. It shows an MD-11 Lufthansa aircraft. So this plane, it lands in Quito and it is loaded with flowers that go from Ecuador to Europe. So Ecuador to Europe, we have so much in Brazil that is inappropriately packed. And I was so impressed when you presented Albano. Well, first, I have some comments to make about first the size of this packaging. There's a lot of work that is missing with our growers. The smaller the package size, the greater the value. We can compare, for example, a bag of coffee and a capsule of Nespresso, for instance. So our growers, they haven't realized this, not yet. They say, no, this is very hard, it's complicated, and we need to pay attention to these things and also consider the entire production chain. Why, as you've mentioned, why do Ecuador and Colombia export bananas? Well, for them, bananas were considered an export. They have a brand and seal and quality certifications. A Brazilian fruit is also very good, but it doesn't reach the same levels like fruit from Israel or from Spain or Europe. We're getting there, but we still need improving. So the entire chain, and that includes plastics and packaging and all solutions that go with the exporting of this fruit. So are we competitive? Are we on the same levels, the quality levels that we find globally, or in terms of contaminants or other solutions about like nanotechnology with bactericide. So the better Brazilian companies are, they will be better able or they will be more competitive with in the international market. Just a second, please. Another great problem we have that I think Brazil has is not only about the image of plastics, but also the image of Brazilian products as a country. Brazil still needs a lot. We need to do a lot to advertise our coffee, for instance. Brazil has the best coffee in the world, but Colombian coffee is known as the best coffee in the world. We have great mango, high quality mango, but we're not recognized for this. And it applies to many other products. We need to try to improve our own image abroad. As a people, Brazilians still think that they over criticize themselves rather than working together, uniting to compete. Well, in the international market, we just criticize each other. Well, this reminds me of what we saw in the corrugated cardboard industry. Brazilian produce was not exported because they were put into those wooden crates. So with corrugated cardboard, they developed packaging that was appropriate for exporting. So they started exporting with fruit in bulk because they had the right packaging to do so. Now, retailers, they don't have Brazilian mangoes, just that small Mexican mango, and I love them to have. But the moment, as soon as I get Brazilian mangoes and Brazilian papayas, I'll be really happy.
I don't know if you know, but we have here in Brazil one of the types of mangoes that can be eaten like papaya. It has no fiber. It's very sweet. It's really wonderful. We need to value this a bit more. But I would just like to point out another problem, Alfred, that we have in the plastic transformation sector in general. Most companies are small. We don't have the strength of an industry like pulp and paper. If you look at the companies in the paper and pulp area, you have Suzano, Klabin, etc. So we don't have a transformation industry in plastics with this strength. So it's very difficult in our case for a company, a small company, to make a huge effort to find its space in this market, which is dominated by giants. Unfortunately, we need to strengthen the transformation industry as a whole for plastics in Brazil for us to become more competitive. And this situation is throughout the world. The large petrochemical producers or resin producers and the large consumers are of transformed products. But it's the small companies that make this transformation possible.
Bom, eu vou seguir e aí depois a gente
I
volta.
will continue and later we can come back to you, Manuel.
Com o Ronald também, né?
I would like to see with
Há 3 anos atrás
Ronald.
você tinha uma
3 years
visão
ago, you had a view
de como iria o mercado de consumo,
of
né?
how the
Iria
consumer
se comportar.
market would
Hoje,
behave for the
com a
future.
pandemia
Today, with
e
the
circular,
pandemic and circular economy, what is your view on this?
Poxa, é verdade, a expectativa continua
The expectation continues to be of expansion. I mentioned 3 years ago about the importance of urbanization,
para o
what this
crescimento do
means
plástico.
for the
E
consumption of plastic.
os grandes
This fact
problemas,
continues. The
mesmo com
great urban centers, even with
os leves distúrbios
the
que as pessoas
slight
saindo das grandes
breakdowns and
cidades,
people
isso vai
leaving large
reverter.
cities,
E as grandes
this will
cidades
revert
continuarão
itself and
crescendo,
large cities will
e a
continue to
tendência
grow.
sempre é crescer. As grandes
As
cidades crescerão.
they grow,
Todas as
these large
cidades
centers, these
porque
large
a
urban
necessidade da
complexes, the need for
Por quê?
plastic
Porque
packaging
a
increases as
distância da
well
pessoa
because
para
as
longe
people
centro do
are
centro
far from the production
precisa lá,
center,
principalmente
they
para aqueles
need
setores
packaging
básicos
and they need
para
plastic
proteger o
packaging to
barateiro do
protect
plástico,
and transport
principalmente isso. Então, eu
food
tenho uma
products.
certa
So
expectativa
I
positiva,
have a
porque nós
positive
precisamos continuar
expectation of
crescendo
what
e vai continuar crescendo.
uh, the growth
O
numbers will be for our
desafio
market.
é
A challenge that we have
de lidar com e
is
contornar
to
essa
deal
situação
and
de
work
serviço,
around
ainda
with
que
of the
as vantagens
situation of the end of
mesmo
life for the packaging.
óbvios que nós sabemos
Despite all the
existem,
benefits that we know to exist, the end of cycle is complicated for consumers, for the city that
negligenciar esse
needs
material
to manage this material,
complicado
and complicated
o
for
sistema
the entire
do processamento de material. Agora, o Brasil
material
ele já
processing
foi
scheme.
colocado,
Brazil has a
como
great
dito
advantage.
na palestra anterior,
It was
que
mentioned in the previous talk.
esse sistema
There
já
is
agora
this system
independente
of
de
independent garbage
que a
collectors,
produção de material,
co-ops, to collect
essa
material.
vantagem é
And
muito
this
grande.
advantage is huge.
Ser
And
sintetizado
if we
junto às
could
indústrias,
synthesize this together with the large industries, this would be a great advantage for the market to have this system, this collection system,
processamento e de reutilização.
processing, and reuse of these materials.
Posso fazer um comentário sobre o
Can I make a comment? Albano, do you want to say something?
só fazer um comentário com relação
I would
a
just
esse
like to
sistema
comment
que
with
aqui no Brasil
regard to the
nós
system that we have in
tivemos
Brazil,
fazer
with regard to the co op of garbage
nós temos
collectors.
esse sistema, mas
We have this system, but unfortunately,
que eu acho que só vai
this is
funcionar
a system that
bem
will only work
numa baixa
while
renda,
we are a low
tá?
income and underdeveloped country.
A renda
Once you
ou
increase
o
income
emprego na
or
sociedade,
increase the number of job
hoje
offerings in
o que
society, you
tinha
have much less this collection system, which is not survival, it's subsistence that they encounter to survive. So once the economy improves or we move to a developed economy, we no longer will have this system. We need to develop other mechanisms to compensate for this deficiency.
não,
Manuel,
muito bom.
yes, now it's 100%. Thank you. I think it is in this line that we were talking about. We need to join the production point to the consumption point. It is distributed. I need to transport, I need to package, and there is no material that transports better than plastic. It will transport and protect. These are the two most important functions of plastic. So we need to work with this. I like a lot this provocation that you set. The material does this very well. Maybe we need to work a bit more on innovation and develop packaging that can do this. So, transportation and protection of these fruit. Along these lines, already twice, both Manuel and Albano mentioned the same thing that Marcos mentioned. So, I would like to hear his opinion in case we don't have any further questions on this regarding this issue of the design, improving the market. I think you're fully right, but I would like you to reinforce more this idea for all of us. I work on the concept that innovation is the engine that drives value. So you need to start with this, and we need to face that we have a complex issue set forth to us. The first time that we reached the bottom of the sea was in a Trieste submarine in 53. So we know absolutely nothing about this planet. We know almost nothing about the relationship of the effects of what we are placing in the market, etc. I followed a presentation by Professor Turra from several countries talking about the effect on the oceans. So we are still crawling in connecting knowledge and draw conclusions and have insights. I think Brazil still lacks this innovation aspect, even if we take large brands. We see initiatives in Europe and in the US, and the same company does not have these initiatives in Brazil. So we are lagging in generating ideas and executing ideas and moving forward. So much of this number of 80% of this impact decided at conception, once you propose a solution for product packaging, that is when we need to understand where this will end what we are conceiving now. I encourage the students where I teach to say, if you are responsible for designing a packaging, I will ask you to understand where the co-op is, spend 2 hours there next to the conveyor, or go up on the conveyor and ask for you to classify the material, for you to understand that material that passed in front of you 1.5 seconds. If you didn't get it, there was a design issue. It wasn't attractive at the moment of truth. So I like the quote from Stephen Blank, which is a guru for the startups. He says, "Get out of the building." That's the name of his book. So take your booty off the chair and go to the real world to see what is happening so that you really understand what you're proposing when you do your work. Not just about packaging design, but the processes you're proposing, the logistics you thought of. How will you connect to distributors? I saw these days a packaging from Elma ships, a box being dismantled and going back to the company. So everyone can do this. So why don't we encourage more this type of idea? So I think we have a sea of strategies to be implemented, and I consider this a blue ocean. And for the plastic sector, the material is so incredible that we only need to add value by innovation to resolve the current issues and move forward. So become less defensive and be more offensive, join hands and knowledge, because we have everything to work out the current issues regarding this material. Marcos, I always make the same challenge and invitation to entrepreneurs. I always say, please, for next month, purchase everything in your house. Don't allow anyone else to go to the supermarket. You will do the groceries. You will buy at all stores, supermarket, bakery, convenience store, so that you understand what is happening there and see where your product lives, dies, and is used, etc. So I fully agree. You need to get off your chair and see in the real world where things are, and you need to live this. Exactly. Go ahead, Tuha. This discussion is very important, and this real world passes through places outside the market and the value chain. For example, those associated to coastline management, and it has to do with illegal occupations. We have a huge number of people that are marginal, including collecting and the appropriate disposal of waste. I have discussed and said that the sea is a great problem. Plastic in the sea is a great problem, but it is also a symptom, and the same type of symptom that says why we have dengue in Brazil, why we have flooding in certain areas. So we're talking about very real issues. In this sense, when I am in these international discussions, and an argument that always comes forth is the following: we have several open taps that make solid waste go to the sea. Fishing, diffuse pollution, illegal occupation, beach tourism of people who are unaware. So many open taps. So, how will we increase the global plastic production without working out these issues? But there are issues here that are not under the governance of the sector. For example, waste management and other aspects. For example, poverty. Poverty itself is an issue. And this is where we need to think how the sector organizes itself for in a structured way to support cities, for example. This program that is being structured by the Global Compact, Braskem, and us, we seek to create mechanisms for cities to be more autonomous, to think what is happening in there, identify the bottlenecks, and with the existing technical solutions, resolve issues at that governance level, which is municipal. The suggestions that Marcos brings, which are brilliant, they have a larger scale and they have to do with the value chain, not so much with the city, even though this impacts the city. But we will be talking about these points, the irregular occupations, and understanding these issues. So it's very important for the sector to understand this and think how they can extend their actions to other aspects that are equally as important in solving this problem in a general fashion. And then, for example, I'm going to produce more. That's what society needs, yes, but what will be produced will not end up in the sea. So I think this is the point that is lacking for the sector not to be so reactive on behalf of society. Well, we are at the very end. So I will ask Patricia, our master of ceremonies, if there are any further questions. And later I will make a brief comment before we conclude. Yes, we do have some questions. I will start with the leader of SustenPlást, Luis Felipe William. He congratulated this event, Alfredo, and he said it was very good. The fourth CBPE, the speakers were excellent, and he's asking when we will have the fifth CBP. I can answer that. It will be held 2 years from now in June of 2023. We have not confirmed the date yet, however. Wonderful. We have another question from Miguel Fernandez from Ingancineto. How do you see the initiative of Blue Keepers in Brazil, and how can we be a partner in this process? It's for Alexandre, the question.
Você cortou um pouquinho, mas eu consegui te ouvir bem aqui. Eu vejo que o Blue Keepers,
I
né,
see that Blue Keepers,
ele está buscando fomentar
they seek to sponsor innovation ecosystems. These innovation ecosystems are spaces to think of the problem and resolve it at a municipal level mainly. This depends on local partnerships between the public power, the private initiative, academia, and organized civil society and citizens at large. So what I see is that the sector that is capillary in the territory needs to organize itself locally to leverage these actions and not do wire transfer to pay the bill. They need to assist because these processes need to be conducted in a mature, participative, and mature way, and their results need to represent understandable solutions by understanding the complexity of the issues that are found in each location. So along these paths is how the sector can structure itself. Of course, supporting the project at a national level, but acting in supporting local solutions. Well, I will now move on to the conclusion. I would like to thank all of you, Manoel, Turra, Albano, Ron, Nuno Aguiar, who I had the pleasure of meeting and seeing for the first time today, Marcos as well. And I would like to quote someone very briefly on plastic. There was a speaker, a very high level speaker, who at one point said the following: plastic is such a wonderful product that if it didn't exist, it would have to be invented. Based on your chuckle, you probably know who said this. Ronald Sasine mentioned this, and I captured that. And I always like to mention this. Sorry, we lost Alfredo's signal there for a second. But I think everyone connected to plastic thinks in the same fashion. I will ask, can you hear me, Patricia? Yes, I can hear you, Alfredo. Before moving to the conclusion, I will ask you to stay here so that you see what will be shown. And we will now present